Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, today we bring two intriguing tales of betrayal and cheating. Let's start with the first story. On my first anniversary, I decided to surprise my wife at work. We had rushed into marriage after just a year of dating, and looking back, I realized I should have taken more time. We'd been married for 3 years when the idea struck me to bring flowers and her favorite restaurant takeout to her workplace. It was my first time visiting her at work, so none of her colleagues knew what I looked like until that moment. The receptionist, Kelly, was utterly flabbergasted and took so long to respond that I began wondering if I had something weird on my face. Eventually, she managed to tell me that my wife had already gone out for lunch but would be back soon. I found a spot in the lobby near the entrance, and Kelly began typing away on her phone like a person possessed. I noticed a couple of women sneaking glances around the reception desk, some casually strolling by to take a look at me or starting hushed conversations with Kelly. Perhaps they were a tad envious because, after all, I was walking in with flowers and a delicious meal for my wife. I felt like a pretty decent guy until my wife walked in through the entrance hand in hand with another man. The moment she spotted me, she released his hand and distanced herself. Her expression was a mix of anger and frustration as she approached me swiftly, while I stood up slowly, caught off guard. She demanded to know what I was doing there, and I stumbled over my words, acutely aware of the 5 women and 1 man fixated on us, intently observing the unfolding drama. Kelly was the one who broke the ice. She turned to me and asked, "Are you her husband?" My wife's hand moved to her mouth. She was grasping the gravity of the situation. "Yes, that's right," I replied. The other guy walked out, and my wife trailed behind him. I attempted to go after her, but Kelly and a few other women blocked my path. They shared that my wife had introduced them to the man as her fiancé 8 months ago, leading them to believe he was the one she was engaged to. You can imagine the shockwave that news sent through me. I handed over the lunch and flowers to Kelly, passing along my phone number. Then, I stepped outside with the aim of finding my wife, who was busy reassuring the man that she would leave me for him, fully committed to their relationship. I interjected, letting them know such a gesture wasn't required. I informed them that I would be filing for divorce and leaving all of her belongings outside for them to collect. I could hardly believe the scene unfolding before me. My wife, who had just been caught in an affair, was desperately pleading with me not to put her high-end branded belongings outside, worried they might get dirty or damaged. I stood there speechless, astounded by her insensitivity toward me. Leaving her in the parking lot with the man she had betrayed me with, I hopped in my car and drove off. As soon as I reached home, a surge of anger and betrayal coursed through me. Without a second thought, I began tossing her belongings out of the second-story window. I phoned my mom in distress, and she rushed over as fast as she could. Joining me in tossing out stuff, she offered words of encouragement, framing the situation as a fresh and exciting beginning. Her comforting words somehow eased the pain. The following day, my wife showed up at my place with her affair partner, who drove a pickup truck. It became painfully clear that my wife had an excessive amount of belongings, and the anxiety in his eyes was evident. Until this unraveling, he had the impression she was a simple single gal with a modest load. Well, turns out she's got baggage, my friend. They began loading his truck, but my wife gave up after breaking a nail, leaving him to do the heavy lifting. Meanwhile, my mom and I focused on tidying up the house indoors. I had already switched the locks, and my wife got mighty peeved when her house key wouldn't work. In some sort of revenge mode, she decided to mess up my front porch. The joke was on her, though, as my doorbell camera captured her in action. Perfectly timed with my filing for divorce, I handed over the footage to the police, and she wound up getting charged with disorderly conduct. It didn't take long for her employer to catch wind of it, and they were seriously disappointed. They promptly let her go, seemingly not wanting someone of her caliber representing their company. Just a week after she got fired, her affair partner called it quits. It took him a bit to realize she wasn't worth holding on to. She called me in a crying fit while he was tossing her belongings, claiming she had no place to crash and didn't know what to do. I basically brushed it off, telling her it wasn't my concern and that she should bunk in her car. I felt pretty darn good that her affair didn't need me too much. I just kept my eyes forward and leaned into the support and assistance I needed to navigate it all. Now time for the second story. I was 32, and my wife was 30, and we had been married for 4 years. She informed me about a work trip, 5 hours away, requiring an overnight stay. This was a new development, as she had only been at the job for 9 months. According to her, her bosses were impressed with her work, and they picked her for the trip, even paying her for it. She tried to sell it as a nice little getaway, mentioning that she needed some time alone for soul-searching. This struck me as odd, as my wife wasn't usually a fan of being by herself. On the day she left, I found myself contemplating the strangeness of her need for alone time, especially in a faraway town. I talked to a buddy about it, and he convinced me to follow her. Initially hesitant, she finally gave me her hotel room number, coming up with a weak excuse. I assured her it was for safety reasons, with no intention of driving 5 hours just for a surprise visit. Around 10 p.m., long after she had arrived and settled in, she texted me good night, which also seemed odd. My wife used to stay up late. We took the elevator up and positioned ourselves by her room's door. The plan was simple. If someone opened the door, we'd barge in without hesitation to prove she was with someone. Before he knocked, I thought I heard some moaning, but I tried convincing myself it was from another room. As the door opened, we stormed in, phones recording. My wife was on the bed, stark naked, struggling to cover herself. When that failed, she hopped off the bed and crouched down, letting out a scream, thinking we were going to call the hotel room phone, not show up in person. I was speechless, unable to believe what I was witnessing. My friend, however, had plenty to say. Having known her through me for the past 4 years, he berated her for being a slimy, worthless cheater. He aimed the camera at the guy, who covered his face, grabbed his stuff, and bolted down the hallway. My wife cried and attempted to yell after him, realizing he had no intention of staying or standing up for her. She hugged her knees, sobbing, sitting naked in the corner of the hotel room, all captured on camera. All that crossed my mind was that she had it coming. While recording, I asked her what on earth she was thinking and who the guy was. After my wife's cryptic response and refusal to provide any answers, my friend took it upon himself to demand an explanation on my behalf. Amid tears, she claimed she didn't know what we wanted her to say. Realizing we wouldn't get any closure, I decided we needed to leave. I made it clear that she wasn't welcome back home, and in frustration, she let out a piercing scream. The ride back was silent, and my friend expressed his apologies for what I was going through. I assured him that I owed my knowledge of my wife's affair to him. Over the next few weeks, he stuck around as I initiated divorce proceedings and stored all of my wife's belongings in the garage, equipped with a camera. I didn't mind sharing the garage code for her to retrieve her things. One day, she showed up with a small moving truck, loading her belongings by herself, unaware of the camera. It recorded her taking some of my possessions and placing them in her truck, potentially with the intention to sell them. Confronting her about what I had seen, she feigned cluelessness. I warned her to return the stolen items or face consequences. 3 days later, I returned home to find my belongings on the porch. For weeks down the line, I received a call from her at 2 a.m., crying and expressing regret. She confessed to missing me and the life we had built together, revealing she was pregnant. I knew without a doubt that the child wasn't mine, considering it had been 2.5 months since we last had intimate relations. She was residing on the floor of her sister's apartment as her parents refused to let her live with them. I told her that she had caused the situation for both of us, and it was beyond repair. I wasn't going to support her or the child from the affair. Her only option was to move forward and make better choices. She apologized once more before ending the call, and we haven't spoken since. On my end, I teamed up with my friend to start a small business and hobby that has flourished. It's something I'm passionate about and is generating income, so I'm genuinely content. My ex-wife's sister reached out to me, asking for assistance with rent and baby expenses, as she somehow believed it was my responsibility. My ex's burdens had shifted to her. I recognize times might be challenging, but I declined to provide support to that deceitful, unfaithful woman, finding some irony in the request.
Dear listener, if you have reached this far, please click on the subscribe button. It will be a great help.